Misschien wat gebeurt ook is dat mijn tonen blauw begint trekken. Ik had mijn dokter bezoekt, mijn dokter bezoekt. Toen hij nagezien dat het gangrene, toen hij geforceerd om mijn tonen af te zetten. Dat jij in mijn mijne gaat, hoe ga ik van de ene plek naar de andere plek komen? Dat was ook met mij. En hoe ga ik mezelf helpen? Want mijn vrouw werkt gedurende die dag. Kijk, ik had de hyperplasie op mijn schade. Toen die dokter had mijn hyperplasie toe, hij heeft mij gezegd dat ik diabetes heb. Ik heb nooit geweten. Toen hij heeft mij gezegd. En van sinds tijd is ik behandeld voor diabetes.
Siyanamukela ku-Killers in Our Midst. Lolu phenyo lwesithungechunge lukhuluma ngezindaba zabantu abagulayo futhi bephila nako ukugula, izifo zendlela yokuziphatha. Lukhulume futhi nabochwepheshe bezempilo abasiza ukuthi baphinde bathole impilo yabo esezingeni. Namhlanje sihlangana no-Elroy du Plessis otholwe nesifo sikashukela. Ngenxa yesifo sikashukela waba nesifo semithambo yegazi phecelezi i-vascular disease. Asizwe udaba lakhe sibone ukuthi singafundani.
Ik was een postman en een postman bleef elke dag op zijn voeten. Ik weet niet hoe kom ik aan die kom. Maar ik was, hoe zal ik zeggen, ik was fix. Hij cirkel de hele dag rijden. Hij bleef aan fix. Hoe kom ik aan zo zien? Of misschien verkeerde kosten op. Het is me nog jong, man. Ik had verkeerde kosten op. Hamburgers. Misschien. Dat is zulke type van kost. Ik kan niet zien hoe ik diabetes korting.
So Mr. du Plessis presented to me about 9 years ago, and he came to me with struggling to walk. And in a diabetic, that is quite critical. It's often a sign that if you can't fix the circulation problems, they're at high risk of losing their legs and needing an amputation. So when he came to me, he had problems, in fact, with both legs, not even just one. His risk factors for his vascular disease was that he was diabetic, he was hypertensive, he smoked, and he had high cholesterol. So he had the whole gambit of everything that causes a vascular disease. Also, his age was a factor, and the fact that he was a male. So the initial referral was through the GP, but 7 years later he came back as an emergency, through the emergency unit, where he basically lost all the blood supply to his right leg. And when I saw him in the emergency unit, he had severe pain, he couldn't sleep, he couldn't stand on his foot was blue and dusky, and essentially it was looking like he was going to lose his leg there. And he was actually advised that with his wife. Now his wife has got a bit of medical insight, and despite that, and despite the family pressuring him, he hadn't been looking after himself. He was still smoking, and when he presented, the blueness on the toes was actually early gangrene. The gangrene is obviously dead tissue. So the dead tissue becomes infected, and it became obvious, and he actually needed to have his toes removed. And by removing the toes, we also removed the very small blocked blood vessels in the foot.
Ik was frustrated, man, because ik kan nergens. Ik kan niet mijzelf zorgen, ik kan niet meer lekker sjouwen. Ik is een persoon wat gewoond is om te sjouwen. Dat heeft mij bij je teruggezet, man. Want ik blij net in die huis.
He needed wound care. And I was the lucky person to do his wound care. So I met him. He's a very energetic man, and he's very positive. So I have to humble myself. So it's not easy for me to go into someone's home and say, you need to change your diet. I don't know where they come from. I don't know their struggles in life. And you know, it's something where you have to step back. You are outsider. You just have to not to criticize. You don't criticize. You have to be open-minded and just have a listening ear.
Into ebalulekileyo ke ngoku masithi ke mhlawumbi xa sekusithiwa ngoku une-diabetes Kubalulekile ukuba siyazi uba akukho diet special for umuntu one-diabetes. Yindlela yokutya esempilweni efanele uba wonke umntu utya ngayo. Umahluko nje kukuthi nje kumntu one-diabetes ngenxa yoba umzimba wakhe ungakwazi ukuwalawula kakuhle la maqondo eswekile. So ke ngoku xa seyile phayana uzawuxilongwa, kufunyaniswe ukuba iswekile yakhe iphezulu, kulapho ke ngoku oogqirha bazawubona uba yeyiphi i-medication emfanele. Abanye mhlawumbi anikwe iipilisi ekuqaleni and then amane bemhlola emva kwenyanga ezintathu uba bayabona uba hayi bamane bezonyusa iipilisi kuphinde bafake no-new date leepilisi emva kwenyanga ezintathu njalo bamane bemjonga uba bayabona uba umzimba ngoku ezi pilisi asayenzi kakuhle, asasebenzi kakuhle, kube lapho ke ngoku umntu bazawumnika i-insulin. Ngoba iyona nto ilawula amaqondo eswekile emzimbeni yi-insulin. Iipilisi eziya zona kuncedisana nomzimba.
Ik vat eerst mijn insulin, dan vat ik mijn porridge. Of misschien hier 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock etenstijd. Snit een snitje brood. Dan wacht ik weer tot die avond toe. Maar wat anders is de avond te eten. Ik had die eten mooi. Zoals je ziet, ik is hier. Kijk me wel om nog eiers te pakken en dat. Ik blijf weg van zulke kosten af. Want dat gaat mij te veel moeite geven. Mijn challenge is ik kan niet gaan waar ik wil. Ik is gewoonlijk, maar kan ik mijn eigen kost gemaakt. Dat kan ik niet meer doen. Nie? Ik heb ook een voertuig op bestuur. Ik kan het niet meer. Ik heb zo met mijn kar verkocht. Nee, ik kan niet. Ik moet maar blijven reizen en het is helemaal gelukkig. Ik is tevreden met mijn toestand. Zeg maar, als er woonkom, ik kan zo 1 keer een week en dan de zuster Kitty wat ook voor mij helpt om mij voor te doen als er woon nou niet. Kom hier. Ik heb alle bijstand wat ik nodig heb.
Toe het zuster Wonder het my altyd gedoen en ek het gekyk en ek het maar nog net gekom en ek is 'n close friend en so is dit. En op 'n dag toe het sy gevra as sy nie teenwoordig kan wees nie, as sy miskien klasse het. Ek het mos nou mooi gekyk, sy sê ja, ek het moet nou mooi gekyk. Sal en ek het dit vir my kan instaan. Toe sê ek nie enige tyd. Ek het mos nou gesien wat jy doen so, ek is maar net hier, ek is by die huis, so hoekom kan ek dit doen en ons is baie lief vir mekaar. So, that's that.
Voor ik die ziekte gehad heb, heb ik gerookt en gedronken. En nou, dat ik het weet, ik heb het nou, drink ik en rook ik nog altijd. Maar ik zou die drinken heb geen probleem. Ik stop ze maar onmiddellijk. Maar die rook, maar ik rook net zo'n halvertje aan nippen kom. En later is misschien zo over 1 uur, daar rook ik ook weer. So ik draai om. I try my utmost best.
And this is where the problem now started, is with the poor circulation under the knee and him not changing his lifestyle issues, there was a delay in the healing of the forefoot amputation. And it was going very well for around about 6 months, and then he hurt his foot. And that resulted in another area of infection in the wound. And that has just taken so long to close. And you'll often hear people saying diabetics take a long time to heal. So it was a combination of all those factors that then resulted in this infection. And over the next year, that infection proceeded to go deeper into the foot and started to infect the bones in the foot. Worst case scenario, the infection is going to stay there. And what might get worse is if he ever falls off the radar and doesn't come for follow-up and neglects himself completely, he could end up with a very nasty infection and he may lose that foot and end up with an amputation anyway. So if you wanted to say, listen, we want the shortest procedure where we know that Elroy would never have to come and see me ever again and he'll be at home and he'll be well, then probably 2 years ago we should have just amputated his leg. But that's got huge implications.
Nee, ik keer niet operatie. Ik voel niet, man. Niet van mij niet, man. Om weer gesnijd te raken, ik is moeg, man. Ik is moeg om aangesnijd te raken, man. Een van daar is niks over van mij niet. Nee, ik voel niet meer lust voor gesnijden, niet, man. Dat gaat het bijna moeilijk maken voor mij.
So it's not about strong-arming patients into changing their lifestyle. They've got to do it on their own volition, otherwise it won't last, or it just won't happen.
Emuva kwekhefu siyabona ukuthi kwenzekani ku-Elroy uthola unakekelo lwesilonda. Siyafunda futhi ngobunzima ahlangabezana nako ngenxa yesifo sikashukela kanye nesifo semithambo yegazi. Siyanamukela futhi ku-Killers in Our Midst. Kulesi siqephu sihlangane no-Elroy, uguliswa isifo sikashukela kanye nesifo semithambo yegazi. Ngaleyo ndlela ululama kancane nje, ukudinga unakekelo silonda kanye nokwelashwa. Uselahlekelwe izinzwane ngenxa yalesi sifo. Ingabe kumele anqunywe unyawo uma ukubhibha kunganqandeki? Ake sibone ukuthi isuku olujwayelekile nonakekelo lwesilonda lubuka kanjani kuyena. Siphinde sifunde nangezinsalelo abhekana nazo njalo nje.
So I do wound care to prevent the risk of infection. I would do wound care most of the patients twice a week or as required.
Now, Mr. Du Plessis, was there pain last night for the two days I wasn't here? Was there pain?
Yeah, there was pain.
Okay, then what did you take?
Still pain.
Still pain.
Doctor is trying to do.
Okay. And then were you walking on the foot?
I have to work. I have to go to the toilet.
Okay, but you're using your frame.
Yeah, I'm using the four-wheel drive, yes.
Okay. And then the bandages, is the bandages still okay?
I don't think so. That's why I asked you. You must check for me first.
Okay. Alright.
But it's to prevent the risk of infection. And by doing that, we have to remove unhealthy tissue from the wounds.
Mr. Du Plessis, is it painful if you remove your sock yourself?
Yeah, it's painful, yes.
Okay. Ready, Mr. Du Plessis? Okay. So it's a bit wet. So what did doctor say? When is your procedure?
Maandag.
Okay.
Maandag.
And what will you be doing for you?
Dus eigenlijk volgens oma tijd als hij gaat nibbel. Zodat die wond kan toekomen en die vel kan oorkomen.
Okay, you're gonna fiddle on the bone.
Ja,
Okay. Is it painful when I touch around here?
That's painful.
Okay, now over here.
Ja.
On top.
Ja.
Okay. I can see so because it's like the fluids was like eating on the skin over there. Okay, but under the foot where I'm touching, is it okay? Can you feel?
I can feel, yeah, but it's not painful.
Not painful. Okay, it's a bit dry, but it's because of the bandage and the sock. And that there wasn't moisturized every day, so that's why it's dry. Okay, so I'm gonna clean, alright? And then I'll try to prevent or I'll try to reduce pain because I don't want to hurt you. Okay? I'm just gonna clean.
And then obviously dress it with antimicrobial or any suitable dressings required or that the patient needs, that's suitable according to the wound type.
It looks a bit better, like the bone has gone, it's sunk in a bit, but the edges here, on the edges, it looks a bit wet, yeah, or a bit raw.
The doctor is tevreden, man.
Yes, when he looks at it in theater, he will see exactly what he wants to do for you.
For wound healing to take place is exceptionally important for his diet change, lifestyle changes, so that we could have a low risk of infection and that we could establish a way forward. So we could, get to a point where healing has taken place for him to live a normal life.
the infection in the bone created what we call a sinus. So there was a constant wet discharge. And so the wound wasn't healing well. And so we wait for healing or granulation tissue to cover over the wound, so then the skin can grow over the granulation tissue. And the original incision is on there. And what's happened is now he's got a sinus here, and you can see this is the bone. So the infection has caused the tissues to recede. So that bone is exposed. That will never heal. So that bone we're going to be nibbling back. So what we did in the last surgery was we had to nibble back and remove as much of that bone as possible to create a pocket where the granulation tissue could close over, and then hopefully we'll get the skin to close over that area. We'll put on one dressing today, but the dressing needs change all the time. So what we do today may need to change next week, but that's where the wound care nurses come in. The diabetes is also very important to be managed, because not only does it affect the circulation, but it affects everything else. The eyes, the kidneys, you name it. So the diabetes is a disaster, and that's where we have physicians who monitor the sugars, they give the GPs good advice. But in Mr. du Plessis' case, he wasn't following the right advice despite having seen a dietitian and having given dietary advice. But to save the leg is actually quite costly, and it requires a big investment both financially and time. And to survive that, you've got to be emotionally strong, and that's where a lot of people fall down. And we do try and get people psychological support, but again, that comes at a cost. So invariably, the best things is if you've got good family support and structures, that's available, it's free, and that's what you need. But you need a functioning family unit, and again, unfortunately in South Africa, that's not in every family.
Uma sibuya sizothola ukuthi uElroy usekulungele yini ukushintsha impilo yakhe. Engabe uzoziqaphela izeluleko azitholayo noma uzolahlekelwa umlenze? Emva kwalokho sizofunda ngemininingwane ebalekile kwi-medical minute. Siyanamukela futhi ku-Killers in Our Midst. Uchungechunge olugxile ezimpilweni zeziguli eziphilisana nezifo zendlela yokuziphatha. Kulesi siqephu sihlangane noElroy, ophilisana nesifo sikashukela kanye nesifo semithambo yegazi kanye nezinye izingqinamba. Usabhema futhi uyakujabulela nokuphuza ngesikhashana, noma udokotela wakhe emluleke ukuthi ayeke. Hlala nathi sibone ukuthi uzimisele yini ukushintsha izenzo zakhe, amukele indlela yokuphila enempilo. Sizofunda futhi ngeminye yemininingwane ebalekile kakhulu kwi-medical minute.
I will encourage patients that in a similar condition to Mr. du Plessis, prevention is better than cure, and it's never too late.
Ik zou moet proberen, anders dan gaat ik mijn voet verloren. So ik moet mijn diet change, ophou drank en ook ophou rook. En ik moet mijn billen afzetten. Dan ga ik maar eieren selectie. Als ik maar eieren ook bij probeer bij wat hij voor mij zegt om te doen. Ik zou moeten, because ik wil niet mijn been verloren.
So, risk factor modification, or getting people to smoke less, to drink less, we know as a society is very important. And we've seen with the lockdown now, how the reduction in the trauma numbers, just by taking away the alcohol, was so amazing. So there's no doubt that as a society, we've got a lot of stresses. Socioeconomic, financial, all of those issues play a big role. And you will often find, I feel, that particularly in the middle and lower socioeconomic groups, because of the stresses and not having means and access to other relieving factors, it's easy to pick up a cigarette as your crutch in life. I joke and say I sometimes wonder if it's the stress of being married that makes men die before they're 90. But the 90-year-old men who I do see in my practice, the one common factor of them all is they all go to gym. And it's not the fact that they're going to gym, it's the fact that they've got some structure and some regular exercise in their life. That's their focus, their stress relief, and they're continuing that right up to that age. That probably gives them a good quality of life and a good physical outcome.
Kijk, mijn vrouw werkt voor het jaar zo. Zij heeft die plan, die medical plan uitgetrekt. Sy is met sulke dinge. Nou is as ek Amerika uit cover eintlik nog vir my. Dit is 'n baie duur proses. En dit is baie moeilik as jy nie aan Amerika uit behoort nie.
Hy kla met sy werk toe kom, vat outomaties kom hy met 'n oor na my toe. Daarom is ek so bly dat hy in Amerika is wat ek ook vir hom ingesit het. Omdat hy alles doen wat ek vir hom sê, daarom is ek baie lief vir hom. Wat gewerk vir my? Dit is nou my tyd om vir hom te werk, want hy kan nie meer werk. Hy loop nie baie op sy voetie, hy sit net daar waar hy sit, hy rook nie baie nie. As hy rook hy 'n halwe sigaret.
You can imagine going through life alone, it becomes more of a hurdle. And this is where family support is very important. So as long as you bring the family in, and whenever we talk to patients, we always make sure that there's family. Because I was joking them and say, you only remember half of what I say, so your wife can remember the other half. And then as a group, that person will do a lot better than if they were functioning as an individual alone.
Ons moet daar wees vir mekaar. En wat ek kon gedoen het, kan jy ook doen. Daar is nie as jy die een jy doen om afgunstig te wees, try jy om het beter te doen. En ons is almal een.
Stop whatever julle doen, soos habits. Julle gaan dinge wat julle aangewoond is doen, wat ongesond is vir die liggaam. Dat gaat julle ook in dieselfde posisie plaas dat wat ek nou in is. En ek wil nie graag hê, julle moet daar deur gaan nie, because is 'n pynlike proses. En vanaand as jy nie dit kan bekostig nie, hulle lewe gesond mense.
Kuyabonakala sengathi uElroy uzimisele ukushintsha izenzo zakhe ezimbi ukuze anqande ukunqunywa izitho zomzimba. Ngokusekwa umndeni wakhe, umakhelwane wakhe, unesi wakhe owenza unakekelo lwesilonda kanye nodokotela, uyabonakala ukuthi angalenza ngcono izinga lempilo yakhe. Bukela futhi kwisonto elizayo lapho sihlangana nesinye isigulane esiphila nezifo zempilo.